"You don't belong here," my father said. I raised my glass and thanked him. The words cut through the Christmas dinner conversation like a blade through silk, sudden and sharp and irreversible. 23 people seated around our extended dining table fell silent, their forks suspended midway to their mouths, their eyes darting between my father's flushed face and my steady hand holding a crystal wine glass filled with his finest Bordeaux. "Thank you, Dad," I said, my voice carrying across the candlelit room with perfect clarity. "That's the nicest thing you've said to me in 32 years. The silence stretched like a held breath. My mother's face had gone pale above her emerald green dress, the one she wore every Christmas because Dad had complimented it once in 1987. My brother Michael shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his wife Sarah reaching for his hand under the table. The cousins, aunts, and uncles who had gathered for our traditional Christmas Eve dinner stared at their plates as if the pattern on the china might provide answers to questions they were afraid to ask. But I wasn't afraid. For the first time in my adult life, I felt completely, utterly free. "Rebecca," my father said, his voice dropping to that dangerous whisper he used when he was trying to maintain control. "You're making a scene." "Am I?" I took a sip of wine, savoring the rich complexity of flavors that probably costs more than most people made in a week. "I thought I was just accepting your assessment of my place in this family." The assessment had been building for months, maybe years, but tonight it had finally crystallized into words. It started when I'd walked through the front door 3 hours ago, my girlfriend Emma's hand warm in mine, both of us dressed in the elegant cocktail attire that Mom had specified in her detailed email about Christmas dinner protocol. "Rebecca's here," Mom had announced to the room, her voice bright with a particular strain that came from pretending everything was normal when it decidedly wasn't, and she's brought her ... friend. As if Emma and I hadn't been together for 4 years. As if we didn't own a house together, share a mortgage, and wear matching rings that weren't quite engagement rings, but meant everything to us. As if the woman I loved was just some casual acquaintance I'd dragged along to fill an empty seat. "Emma," I'd corrected gently. "Her name is Emma, Mom. You've met her at least a dozen times." "Of course," Mom had said, her smile never wavering. "Emma, how lovely to see you again." But it wasn't lovely, and we all knew it. Emma was a reminder of everything about me that my family preferred to ignore. Everything that didn't fit into their carefully constructed narrative of who the Hartwell children were supposed to be. Michael was the successful lawyer with the perfect wife and 2 beautiful children. I was the disappointment who worked at a nonprofit, lived with a woman, and refused to pretend otherwise for the sake of family harmony. The evening had proceeded with the usual careful choreography of avoidance. Conversations that stopped when I approached. Questions about my career that dripped with condescension. Pointed discussions about Michael's latest promotion, his children's achievements, his wife's charity work, all the acceptable ways to contribute to society and the family legacy. Emma had handled it with grace, as she always did. She'd complimented Mom's cooking, asked thoughtful questions about my cousins' lives, and pretended not to notice when Uncle Richard made a joke about alternative lifestyles that wasn't quite loud enough for her to hear, but wasn't quite quiet enough to miss. But I'd noticed everything. The way conversations shifted when we joined them. The way my achievements were dismissed while Michael's were celebrated. The way Emma was introduced as my friend even to relatives who knew perfectly well who she was. The way my father's jaw tightened every time I mentioned our house, our plans, our life together. The breaking point had come during dinner, when Aunt Margaret had asked about my work with homeless LGBTQ youth. It was a question that should have been safe, neutral, maybe even supportive. Instead, it had become an opportunity for my father to hold forth on the real problems facing society. The importance of traditional values and the danger of enabling people who needed to take responsibility for their choices. Some people, he'd said, his eyes fixed on me with laser precision, seem to think that society owes them acceptance for every decision they make, no matter how it affects their families or communities. That's when I'd understood. This wasn't about my work or my lifestyle or even about Emma. This was about me, about the fundamental fact of my existence in this family, about the way my very presence challenged everything they wanted to believe about themselves. "You're right," I'd said, setting down my fork with deliberate care. "Some people do expect acceptance from their families." "Imagine that," Rebecca, my mother had warned, but I was past the point of heeding warnings. I mean, what kind of person expects their family to love them unconditionally? What kind of daughter thinks she deserves a place at the table just because she's related by blood? "That's enough," my father had said, his voice rising slightly. "Is it? Because I don't think it's nearly enough. I think 32 years of pretending to be someone I'm not for the sake of family peace is more than enough. I think for years of bringing the woman I love to family gatherings, where she's treated like an unwelcome stranger, is more than enough. If you're so unhappy here," my father had said, his mask finally slipping completely, "then maybe you should consider whether you belong here at all." And there it was. The truth that had been lurking beneath every stilted conversation, every forced smile, every careful omission. I didn't belong here, not as I was, not as the person I'd fought so hard to become. "You don't belong here," he'd repeated, as if saying it twice would make it more true, more final. That's when I'd raised my glass. Now, as the silence stretched into its second minute, I could see the calculations happening behind my family's eyes. The weighing of loyalty against comfort, tradition against truth, love against convenience. I could see my mother's desperate desire to smooth things over, to find some middle ground where everyone could pretend this conversation had never happened. But there was no middle ground. There never had been. "You know what the funny thing is?" I said, still holding my glass aloft like a toast, waiting to be completed. "You're absolutely right. I don't belong here. I haven't belonged here for years, maybe decades. I've just been too afraid to admit it." Emma's hand found mine under the table, her fingers intertwining with mine in a gesture of solidarity that meant more than any words could have had. She belonged here even less than I did, but she'd come anyway, year after year. Because she loved me enough to endure the subtle hostility and careful exclusion. "The question is," I continued, my voice growing stronger with each word, "what are we going to do about it?" I stood up from the table, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor with a sound that seemed to echo through the sudden stillness. 23 pairs of eyes followed my movement, some shocked, some guilty, some carefully blank. The Christmas tree in the corner twinkled with lights that had been strewn with mathematical precision, each ornament placed according to a decades-old system that brooked no deviation. "Rebecca, please," my mother whispered, her voice barely audible above the soft crackling of the fireplace. "It's Christmas Eve. Can't we just what, Mom? Just pretend this didn't happen. Just go back to the way things were." I looked around the table, taking in each face. The way things were wasn't working. Not for me, not for Emma, and honestly, not for any of you either. My brother Michael finally found his voice. "Becca, you're overreacting." Dad didn't mean Dad meant exactly what he said. I turned to face my father, who was sitting rigidly in his chair at the head of the table, his face a mask of barely controlled anger. "Didn't you, Dad? You meant that I don't belong in this family as long as I insist on being myself." "I meant," he said slowly, each word carefully measured, "that actions have consequences, that choices affect not just the person making them, but everyone around them. And my choice to love Emma affects you how, exactly?" The question hung in the air like smoke from the candles, acrid and impossible to ignore. I could see my father struggling with his answer, torn between his desire to maintain the moral high ground and his inability to articulate exactly what harm my relationship had caused anyone. "It's not about Emma specifically," he said finally. "It's about the example you're setting, the message you're sending to your cousins, to the younger generation." "What message is that?" "That love is love, that authenticity matters more than appearances. That it's possible to build a life based on honesty instead of pretense. That's not what what? Please, Dad, explain to me what terrible message I'm sending by being in a committed, loving relationship with someone who makes me happy." The silence that followed was different from the shocked quiet that had greeted my initial toast. This was the silence of people confronting uncomfortable truths, of long-held beliefs being examined in the harsh light of direct questioning. Emma squeezed my hand, and I drew strength from her presence. She'd been through this before, with her own family, and had emerged stronger and more self-assured on the other side. She'd tried to prepare me for this moment, had warned me that sometimes the only way to find your real family was to stop pretending that blood relations automatically qualified as love. "The message you're sending," Aunt Margaret said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tension, "is that family doesn't matter. That tradition doesn't matter. That you can just throw away everything that's been built over generations because it doesn't suit your personal preferences." I turned to face her, this woman who had attended every family gathering for 40 years, who had never missed a birthday or anniversary, who had appointed herself the keeper of family traditions and the arbiter of acceptable behavior. "What exactly has been built over generations, Aunt Margaret? What tradition am I threatening?" "The tradition of family unity, of putting the family's needs before your own selfish desires." Selfish desires. I repeated the words slowly, tasting their bitterness. "Is that what you call love? Is that what you call the desire to be accepted for who I am, rather than who you want me to be? I call it selfishness when you force your lifestyle on people who don't want to see it." "Force my lifestyle?" I laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Margaret, I brought my girlfriend to Christmas dinner. I didn't force anyone to do anything except acknowledge that she exists." "You're flaunting it," Uncle Richard chimed in, his face flushed with wine and righteous indignation. "Bringing her here, holding hands, acting like it's normal." "It is normal. For me, it's completely normal." "Well, it's not normal for the rest of us," and there it was. The truth that had been hiding beneath all the polite deflections and careful word choices. It wasn't about family unity or tradition or setting examples. It was about their discomfort with who I was, their inability to accept that their definition of normal didn't encompass the full spectrum of human experience. "Then maybe," I said quietly, "the rest of you need to expand your definition of normal." My cousin Jennifer, who had been silent throughout the exchange, suddenly spoke up. "I think Rebecca's right." Every head turned toward her, and I saw my own surprise reflected in the faces around the table. Jennifer was the good girl, the one who had never caused waves, never challenged authority, never stepped out of line. "I think," she continued, her voice growing stronger, "that we've been pretending for so long that we've forgotten what honesty looks like. Rebecca and Emma have been together for 4 years. They own a house together. They're committed to each other. Why are we pretending otherwise?" "Because," my father said, his voice tight with frustration, "some things are private. Some things don't need to be paraded in front of the entire family." "Like what?" "Like love, like commitment, like the basic facts of someone's life." Jennifer's cheeks were flushed, but her voice remained steady. "We talk about Michael's marriage all the time. We celebrate his anniversaries. We ask about his wife. We include her in everything. Why is Rebecca's relationship different?" "Because it's not the same thing," my father said. "Why not?" The question was simple, direct, impossible to answer without revealing the prejudice that lay beneath all the careful rationalizations. My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again, and finally fell silent. "Because they're both women," my mother said quietly, speaking the truth that everyone had been dancing around all evening. "Because it makes people uncomfortable. Because it's not what we're used to." The admission hung in the air like a confession, raw and honest and painful. My mother's face was streaked with tears, but her voice was steady. "I'm sorry, Rebecca," she continued. "I'm sorry that we've made you feel unwelcome. I'm sorry that we've made Emma feel unwelcome. I'm sorry that we've been so focused on our own comfort that we forgot about yours." It was more honesty than I'd heard from my mother in years, maybe ever. The careful facade she'd maintained for decades was cracking, revealing the woman underneath, who had been struggling with her own conflicts between love and expectation, acceptance and tradition. "Mom," I said softly, my anger beginning to give way to something more complex, more nuanced. "No, let me finish." She wiped her eyes with her napkin, smearing her carefully applied makeup. I love you. I've always loved you. But I've been so afraid of what other people would think. So worried about doing the wrong thing that I forgot the most important thing, which is that you're my daughter. That your happiness matters more than anyone else's opinion. That Emma makes you happy in a way I've never seen before. The words hit me like a physical blow, unexpected and overwhelming. I'd been prepared for anger, for rejection, for the final severing of already tenuous family bonds. I hadn't been prepared for this tentative reaching across the divide that had separated us for so long. I don't know how to do this, Mom continued, her voice breaking slightly. I don't know how to be the mother you need me to be, but I want to learn, if you'll let me. I looked around the table, seeing my family with new eyes. Not the monolithic wall of disapproval I'd been expecting, but a collection of individuals struggling with their own fears and limitations. Some, like my father and Uncle Richard, might never come around. But others, like my mother and Jennifer, were reaching towards something better, something more honest and inclusive. I don't know how to do this either, I admitted. I don't know how to be part of a family that's trying to change instead of one that's determined to stay the same. Emma spoke for the first time since the confrontation had begun. Maybe we could figure it out together. Her voice was soft but clear, carrying the weight of 4 years of patience and hope and quiet dignity in the face of subtle rejection. She was offering not just forgiveness, but partnership in the difficult work of rebuilding relationships that had been damaged by years of misunderstanding and fear. I'd like that, my mother said, looking directly at Emma for the first time all evening. I'd like to get to know you better. The real you, not the version I've been too afraid to see. It wasn't a complete transformation. It wasn't the magical Christmas reconciliation that movies promised, but it was a beginning, a crack in the wall that might eventually become a door. The dining room had taken on the quality of a confessional. Intimate and charged with the electricity of long-suppressed truths, finally being spoken aloud. The Christmas dinner lay forgotten on our plates. The carefully prepared turkey, growing cold while we navigated the more complex feast of honesty that had been served alongside it. There's something I need to tell you all, Jennifer said suddenly, her voice cutting through the tentative quiet that had settled over the table. Something I should have said years ago. She looked around the room, her eyes lingering on each face before settling on mine. Rebecca, you're not the only one who's been hiding who they really are. The words sent a ripple of tension through the already charged atmosphere. I could see my parents exchanging glances, could feel the collective intake of breath from the assembled family members. Jennifer, my mother said carefully, what are you talking about? I'm talking about the fact that I've been living a lie for the past 15 years. Jennifer's hands were shaking as she reached for her wine glass, but her voice remained steady. I'm talking about the fact that watching Rebecca get crucified for being honest has made me realize how much of a coward I've been. My father's face had gone pale. Jennifer, whatever you think you need to say, I need to say that I'm gay too. The words exploded across the table like a bomb, shattering what remained of our family's carefully constructed facade. Jennifer, the perfect daughter, the one who had never caused problems, never challenged expectations, never stepped out of line, was sitting there with tears streaming down her face and her chin raised in defiance. I've been gay since I was 13 years old, she continued, her voice growing stronger with each word. I've been in love with my roommate Sarah for the past 8 years. We've been planning to get married. But I've been too afraid to tell any of you because I've watched how you treat Rebecca. The silence that followed was deafening. Uncle Richard's mouth was hanging open, Aunt Margaret looked like she might faint, and my parents appeared to be in shock. But I felt something else entirely, a fierce pride in my cousin's courage, mixed with a deep sadness for the years she'd spent hiding. Jennifer, I said softly, why didn't you tell me? She turned to me with a smile that was equal parts joy and regret. Because I was ashamed. Because I thought if I could just be perfect in every other way, maybe it would balance out. Maybe I could earn enough approval to offset the disappointment of being who I really am. And how did that work out for you? Terribly. I've been miserable for years, watching you be brave enough to live authentically while I hid behind lies and half-truths. Tonight, when I watched Dad tell you that you don't belong here, I realized that I don't belong here either. Not as the person I've been pretending to be. My father found his voice first. This is ridiculous. First Rebecca, now you. What's next? Is Michael going to announce he's gay too? I'm not gay, Michael said quietly, but I have something to say as well. All eyes turned to my brother, the golden child. The one who had always done everything right, who had never caused our parents a moment's worry or disappointment. I've been watching this family tear itself apart for years, he said, his voice heavy with emotion. I've watched Rebecca be treated like a second-class citizen because she fell in love with a woman. I've watched Jennifer hide who she is because she was terrified of the same treatment. And I've said nothing because it was easier to be the good son than to stand up for what's right. He turned to face our father directly. Dad, you're wrong. Rebecca does belong here. Jennifer belongs here. Emma belongs here. And if you can't see that, then maybe you're the one who doesn't understand what family really means. The room erupted in a cacophony of voices. Uncle Richard sputtering about the decline of moral values, Aunt Margaret demanding to know what had gotten into everyone, various cousins trying to process the revelations that had just been dropped on them like grenades. But through it all, I found myself looking at Emma, who was watching the chaos with a mixture of amazement and concern. She'd been through her own family drama when she'd come out, had experienced her own version of rejection and eventual acceptance. She knew how painful this process could be, but also how necessary. Stop, I said, my voice cutting through the noise. Everyone, just stop. The room fell quiet again, all eyes turning to me. This isn't about being gay or straight or anything else, I said. This is about whether we're going to be a family that loves each other unconditionally, or a family that loves each other only when it's convenient. I looked around the table, meeting each person's eyes in turn. Jennifer, I'm proud of you for telling the truth. I'm sorry you felt like you had to hide for so long, and I'm sorry I wasn't a better example of how to handle family rejection. You were a perfect example, she said through her tears. You showed me that it's possible to choose authenticity over approval. Michael, I continued, thank you for speaking up. It means more than you know to have your support. My brother nodded, his own eyes bright with unshed tears. I should have said something years ago. I'm sorry it took this long. Finally, I turned to my parents. Mom, Dad, I know this is hard. I know it's not what you expected or wanted for your children, but this is who we are. This is your family, in all its messy, complicated, imperfect reality. My mother was crying openly now, her carefully applied makeup completely ruined. I don't understand, she said. I don't understand how I failed so badly that both of my daughters felt like they couldn't talk to me. You didn't fail, I said gently. You just got so focused on what you thought we should be that you forgot to see who we actually are. But how do I fix it? How do I make up for all the years of making you feel unwelcome? It was Emma who answered, her voice soft but clear. You start by accepting us as we are, not as who you wish we were. You start by treating our relationships with the same respect you give to Michael's marriage. You start by remembering that love is love, regardless of the gender of the people involved. My father had been silent throughout this exchange, his face cycling through a range of emotions I couldn't quite read. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know if I can do that. The honesty was brutal, but necessary. At least he wasn't pretending anymore, wasn't hiding behind euphemisms and deflections. Then that's your choice, I said. But it's also your loss. I stood up again, Emma rising beside me. We're going to go now. Thank you for dinner, Mom. It was ... illuminating. Rebecca, wait, Jennifer called out. Don't leave like this. I'm not leaving angry, I said. I'm leaving honest. For the first time in my adult life, I'm leaving a family gathering, having said exactly what I think and feel. That's not a loss. That's a victory. I looked around the table one more time, taking in the faces of the people who had shaped my childhood. who had loved me imperfectly but genuinely, who were now struggling to reconcile their expectations with reality. "The invitation stands," I said. "If any of you want to be part of our lives, our real lives, not the sanitized version we've been performing for your comfort, you know where to find us. Emma and I will be at home, being exactly who we are, with or without your approval." As we gathered our coats and prepared to leave, my mother caught my arm. "Rebecca," she said, her voice thick with emotion, "I love you. I've always loved you. I need time to figure out how to show it better. I love you too, Mom. And I hope you figure it out, because I'm tired of pretending that love without acceptance is enough." We walked out into the crisp December night, leaving behind the warmth of the house and the complexity of family dynamics that would take years to fully untangle. But for the first time in my adult life, I felt like I was walking toward something instead of away from it. The drive home was quiet, filled with the kind of silence that comes after a storm, not empty, but full of the settling dust of words that had finally been spoken. Emma's hand rested on my thigh as I navigated the familiar streets of my childhood neighborhood. Past houses decorated with Christmas lights that seemed almost absurdly cheerful after the intensity of the evening we just experienced. "Are you okay?" Emma asked as we pulled into our driveway. The question carrying the weight of 4 years of similar evenings, similar tensions, similar disappointments. "I think so," I said, and was surprised to realize I meant it. "I think I'm better than okay. Actually." Our house looked different somehow as we approached the front door. As if the events of the evening had shifted my perspective on everything, including the life we'd built together. The Christmas wreath Emma had hung last week seemed brighter, more welcoming, a symbol of the home we'd created based on honesty and mutual respect rather than obligation and tradition. Inside, our Christmas tree stood in the corner of the living room, decorated with an eclectic mix of ornaments that told the story of our relationship. The star from our first Christmas together, the ceramic cat that looked like our rescue Tabby Fitzgerald, the handmade ornament from Emma's niece, who had never questioned our relationship because children blessedly often understood love better than adults. "I can't believe Jennifer is gay," I said, sinking onto the couch and finally allowing myself to process the evening's revelations. All these years, I thought I was the only one struggling with this family. "She was protecting herself," Emma said, settling beside me and pulling a throw blanket over both of us. "You can't blame her for that. I don't blame her. I just... ... I wish I'd known. I wish we could have supported each other. Maybe you can now." My phone buzzed with a text message, and I was surprised to see Jennifer's name on the screen. "Speaking of which," I said, showing Emma the phone. The message was simple: "Thank you for being brave first. Can we talk tomorrow?" I typed back. "Of course. I'm proud of you." The response came immediately. "I'm proud of you too. I always have been." I felt tears prick my eyes as I set the phone aside. "For years," I said, "for years of family dinners where I felt like an outsider, and she was feeling the same thing. But she's not feeling it alone anymore," Emma pointed out, "and neither are you." She was right. The evening had been painful, but it had also been clarifying. The lines had been drawn, the positions had been stated, and for the first time in years, I knew exactly where I stood with my family. Some of them, like my father and Uncle Richard, might never come around. But others, like my mother and Jennifer and Michael, were at least willing to try. "Do you think your mom meant it?" Emma asked. "About wanting to get to know me better." "I think she wants to mean it," I said. "Whether she can follow through is another question." My phone rang, and I was surprised to see my mother's name on the caller ID. I hesitated for a moment before answering. "Hi, Mom, Rebecca, I'm so sorry." Her voice was thick with tears, and I could hear the exhaustion of the evening in every word. "I'm sorry for tonight. I'm sorry for all the nights before tonight. I'm sorry for making you feel like you had to choose between being yourself and being part of this family." "Mom, no, let me finish. I've been thinking about what you said, about love without acceptance not being enough. You're right. I've been telling myself that I love you while simultaneously asking you to hide the most important parts of your life. That's not love. That's selfishness. I felt my throat tighten with emotion. What are you saying? I'm saying I want to do better. I want to learn how to be the mother you deserve, the mother Emma deserves. I want to understand your life instead of just tolerating it. That's all I've ever wanted. Mom, I know. And I'm sorry it took me so long to see it. She paused, and I could hear voices in the background. Your father and I have been talking. He's struggling with this more than I am, but he loves you, Rebecca. He's just scared. Scared of what? Scared of change. Scared of admitting he's been wrong. Scared of what it means to have a family that doesn't look like what he expected. I understood that fear, had lived with my own version of it for years. The fear of disappointing people you love, of challenging their fundamental beliefs about how the world should work, of forcing them to choose between their comfort and your authenticity. What about Jennifer? I asked. Jennifer went home about an hour ago. She's going to bring Sarah to New Year's dinner, if that's okay with you. Why wouldn't it be okay with me? Because this is your fight too. Because you've been carrying this burden alone for so long, and now suddenly you're not alone anymore. I thought you might need time to adjust. It was a surprisingly perceptive observation from a woman who had spent years missing the obvious signs of her daughter's struggles. I'm happy for Jennifer, I said. I'm happy that she finally feels free to be herself, and I'm happy that you finally feel free to tell us exactly what you think of us. I laughed despite myself. Was I that harsh? You were honest. It's what we needed to hear, even if it wasn't what we wanted to hear. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet of our living room, processing the conversation and the evening that had led to it. Emma had fallen asleep against my shoulder, her breathing soft and even, her presence, a constant reminder of what I'd been fighting for all these years. My phone buzzed with another text, this one from Michael. I'm sorry I didn't speak up sooner. I'm proud to be your brother. Then one from Jennifer. Sarah wants to meet you and Emma. Would you like to have dinner this week? And finally, surprisingly, one from my father. I may not understand, but I'm trying to. That has to count for something. It did count for something. It counted for everything. I looked around our living room at the life Emma and I had built together, at the Christmas tree that represented our own traditions and values, at the photos on the mantelpiece that showed us surrounded by friends who had become our chosen family. This was home. This was where I belonged. But maybe, just maybe, there was room for more than one kind of belonging in my life. 6 months later, I stood in my parents' backyard watching my mother teach Emma how to plant tomatoes in the garden that had been her pride and joy for 30 years. The sight would have been unimaginable 6 months ago, but here they were, their heads bent together over seedlings, their voices mixing with the sound of birds and the distant laughter of children playing in the neighborhood. She's got good instincts, Mom was saying, her hands guiding Emma's as they carefully transplanted a young plant. You can tell she really cares about making things grow. It was the kind of casual acceptance I'd dreamed of for years but never quite believed was possible. Not the dramatic, movie-style reconciliation where everyone hugged and cried and promised to do better, but the quiet, daily work of building new patterns of interaction, new ways of being family. The transformation hadn't been instant or complete. My father still struggled with casual displays of affection between Emma and me. Still changed the subject when we talked about our future plans. Still referred to Emma as my friend when talking to his golf buddies. But he'd also started asking about her work, remembering her birthday, and including her in family photos without being prompted. Small steps, Emma had said when I'd expressed frustration about his slow progress. Change is hard for everyone, but especially for people who've spent decades believing one thing and are now being asked to believe something else entirely. She was right, of course. Emma was usually right about these things. Having navigated her own family's journey from rejection to acceptance with a patience and wisdom that I was still learning to emulate, Jennifer and Sarah had become regular fixtures at family gatherings. Their relationship seamlessly integrated into the family dynamic in a way that highlighted just how artificial the barriers had been all along. Sarah was funny and kind and clearly devoted to Jennifer, and even Uncle Richard had grudgingly admitted that she made excellent potato salad. "Rebecca, my mother called from the garden. Come help us with this. Emma says you're the one with the green thumb in your family." Your family, the casual possessive made my heart skip a beat. Not you and Emma, not your household, but your family. It was a small thing. But small things mattered when you'd spent years having your relationship diminished and dismissed. I joined them in the garden, kneeling in the rich soil that Mom had been cultivating for decades. "What do you need help with?" "We're trying to decide where to plant the herbs," Emma said, her face flushed with sun and happiness. "Your mom thinks they should go near the kitchen window, but I think they'd get better light over by the fence." "Why don't we plant some in both places?" I suggested. "See which ones do better, and then we'll know for next year." "Next year," Mom repeated, and I could hear the hope in her voice. I liked the sound of that. We worked in comfortable silence for a while, our hands moving in rhythm as we prepared the soil and arranged the plants. It felt like a metaphor for the work we'd been doing as a family, breaking up the hard-packed earth of old assumptions. Making space for new growth, trusting that with enough care and attention, something beautiful might take root. "I have some news," I said as we finished planting the last of the seedlings. "Emma and I are getting married." The words hung in the air for a moment, and I held my breath, waiting for my mother's reaction. We'd been engaged for 3 months, but had been waiting for the right moment to share the news with my family. "Oh, honey," Mom said, her eyes filling with tears. "That's wonderful. We're thinking of having the ceremony in our backyard, something small and intimate. Would you like me to help plan it?" The question was tentative, hopeful, loaded with years of missed opportunities and the desire to make up for lost time. I looked at Emma, who nodded encouragingly. "We'd love that, Mom." She pulled both of us into a fierce hug, her tears mixing with dirt and sweat and the promise of new beginnings. "I'm so happy for you both. I'm so proud of the life you've built together." Later that evening, as we sat around the dinner table, the same table where I'd made my dramatic exit 6 months earlier, I marveled at how much had changed. Jennifer and Sarah were there, their hands intertwined on the tablecloth, their easy affection no longer hidden or apologized for. Michael and his wife had brought their children, who had adapted to their expanding family with the resilience that children brought to most situations. Even my father seemed more relaxed, though I could see him still working to find the right words. Still struggling to bridge the gap between his old assumptions and his new reality. "Rebecca," he said as we finished dessert, "I want you to know that I've been thinking about what you said, about belonging." The table grew quiet, everyone sensing the weight of the moment. "I was wrong," he continued, his voice steady but emotional. "You do belong here. You've always belonged here. I was just too stubborn and too scared to see it." "Dad, let me finish. I may not understand everything about your life, about the choices you've made, about the person you've become. But I understand that you're my daughter and that Emma makes you happy, and that's enough. It has to be enough." It was more than I'd ever expected from him, more than I dared to hope for. Not perfect understanding, but acceptance. Not complete comfort, but genuine effort. Not the father I'd wished for as a child, but the father he was capable of being as an adult. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means everything to me." As we prepared to leave that night, Mom pressed a small wrapped package into my hands. "For your engagement," she said. "I hope you'll like it." Inside was a pair of silver candlesticks that had belonged to my grandmother, along with a note in my mother's careful handwriting, "For your new family. With love and hopes for many happy years together, driving home under a sky full of stars." Emma's hand warm in mine, I thought about the strange journey that had brought us to this point. The angry words that had needed to be spoken, the painful truths that had needed to be acknowledged. The slow work of rebuilding relationships on a foundation of honesty rather than pretense. "Are you happy?" Emma asked as we pulled into our driveway. "I'm happy," I said, and meant it completely. "I'm finally, genuinely happy." Our house welcomed us home with the warm glow of the porch light we'd left on, a beacon in the darkness that said this was where we belonged, where we were loved, where we could be exactly who we were without apology or explanation. But now, for the first time in years, it wasn't the only place where that was true. The empty chair at my family's table had been filled not with compromise or pretense, but with the radical act of showing up as ourselves and demanding to be seen. And somehow, miraculously, we had been